Okra is one of those vegetables I learned to appreciate as I got older. Okra is a vegetable that reminds me a lot of my grandmother. She used to cook it regularly, as it's usually the case in Brazil. Okra is used extensively in Brazil, and it's usually just fried in a pan and then eaten with rice and beans and whatever else you have. But okra only performs well in a very hot place, very hot climate. So planting it while you still have a spring chill is not a good idea. You should plant it right there as summer is beginning and you start to see temperatures in the 80s and 90s. I am planting it in a bed. It's the first year I built that bed, and I'm not sure how it's gonna handle, because while it's very sunny in the morning, doesn't have full sun in the afternoon. So I'm not putting too much hope that this might produce a lot of fruit, but I'll still try and see how this bed reacts. I had relatively little success with okra in my previous garden, precisely because solar exposure there was not ideal. It was located on the north slope of a river valley, a thin but long sliver of land with tall trees covering most of the backyard, leaving only a sunny postage stamp-sized front garden with better solar exposure. But even that went away as taller trees on the other side of the road started to cast shadow, eating away the afternoon sun. Add to that the fact that I tried to pack in a ton of plants in the little sunny patch I had, and okra, which requires ample sunlight and space to grow, would usually not compete with the other more eager vegetables. I was hoping I would have better luck here. I'm interplanting the okra amongst the lettuce starts because I'm sure that the lettuce will grow fast and then the okra will take up once the lettuce is done. Okra takes a little bit of time to start producing, even though I think this is an early variety, yes, so it should produce a little bit sooner. We'll see. Usually you want to put your okra in the sunniest spot you can find because they are a warm weather crop. But if you can't, at least try to find a place that has at least 6 to 7 hours of sunlight. This garden did have a lot more sun and open space. While this new bed would catch the shade of my house after 3 p.m., it still got a solid 6 hours of direct sunlight, plus some reflected light later on. Okra prefers to grow directly in the garden. Transplanting is not recommended, although it can be done if you're careful not to disturb the root ball. If you grow them in peat pots or newspaper, which would disintegrate in the ground, that is a better option. They have brittle roots that don't like to be disturbed. They have relatively large seeds that can be handled with ease. That makes direct seeding a better option anyways. If you live in a place with plenty of rain in spring, you may get away with sowing them dry, especially if temperatures at night are mild. You can also soak the seeds in water 12 to 18 hours to aid in germination. Alternatively, you can pre-sprout them with the plate method and transplant them out as soon as the white roots start cracking the seed coat. This will also allow you to know exactly which seeds are alive and may prevent you from sowing dead old seed. We had a lot of rain and warm temperatures, so in about a week I had beautiful okra seedlings amongst my lettuce starts. It's about 2 weeks since I planted the okra, and it's doing really well. Most of it has sprouted, which is great. I didn't have to do much more than direct seed. This proves that gardening really doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need all this crazy apparatus. You just need seed and soil, maybe water, or probably water and sunlight. But the okra did do so well only because the seed was very fresh and I planted it when the temperatures were absolutely correct. It was in late May or mid-May, when we had 60s, 70-degree weather, even at night. And that made it so that the okra could really jumpstart its growth and not suffer from any setback from cold weather. Okra does not like cold weather. And also because I cover the bed with lots of layers of mulch from grass clippings whenever I cut the lawn, I've kept the soil covered so that other competing weeds do not grow as much. And I also have the interplanted lettuce here, which will save me time so that I just don't have bare soil. So if you're able to stagger your functions, you're able to schedule your planting in such a way that you always have one plant growing ready when next is ready to be harvested, and so on and so forth, you'll be able to produce a lot more and less. Even though I have a large yard, I have to kind of concentrate all my efforts inside of these cages. And that's because I do have groundhogs in the area. And if I don't cover things like this, they will ravish every single little bit of greens that they love to eat. And that includes most edible species, especially annual vegetables. For that reason, I have to keep most of my edible gardening contained in these cages. And while I plan to add a few more, it's not going to be the whole place. So I have to garden in a contained space. I think this can translate very easily to those who are in smaller spaces, either a suburban lot that's smaller or even an urban lot that you might have just a small front yard and you're able to grow. Hopefully you don't have to build cages, because usually in urban spaces you don't have problems with groundhogs and deer and things of that sort. You might have with rats, which is another thing altogether. But anyways, it makes sense to grow in a biointensive way because it's also less work. If you're able to concentrate your energies in a smaller area, you're able to take care of the area better. The vigor of the new planting was increasing my hope for this garden. I knew I would start harvesting soon. How did my okra turn out? You will find out right after this commercial. About 2 months after sowing in late July, the okra was yielding a harvest. Okra only produces one pod at a time per plant, so if you want to harvest several pods, you will have to grow several plants. They do have beautiful hibiscus-like flowers. The okra has been producing, and I've actually been out for a week. There are some large ones. Now you have to keep picking your okra daily because when it grows this size, there's really nothing you can do with it. It's way too tough to be eaten, and you see that by bending the edge, it should snap. So okra, you need to pick it when it's very young. The younger you pick it, the better it tastes. Well, I'll have to take out the old ones so that the plant keeps producing, and make sure to keep harvesting daily if I can. Now, I do feel like the okra has responded well to this place. Ideally, it should have the whole box to itself, and maybe that's something I'll do in the future. But it has produced way better than any other times I've tried to plant it in my old place because it just has much more sun. That being said, I am sure the next year I'll plant more plants so that I can harvest one okra from each, perhaps daily or every other day. That way I'll have a constant supply of okra during the summer, and knowing that this is a perfect spot for them, it just makes sense. So perhaps I won't be covering them or shading them partially with beans, just because the management becomes difficult. I think growing the lettuce underneath it was a great idea. It was a great use of space and a way of having polycultures work to the best of both plants. But the beans might be competing a bit. They're not competing as much, I think, in terms of production, because it's still producing as much as possible, but just for my management, it's easier to deal with one box of okra. We'll see. Maybe I'll find other vegetables that grow really well and have easy management. But other than that, it's here, it's growing. The groundhogs have not eaten it, and that's always a plus. They were indeed doing phenomenally well. I had not added any fertilizer other than ample grass clippings. The native soil here had to be very fertile. Despite being somewhat cramped inside the cage, they managed to produce beautiful verdant leaves. No pests had attacked them, and they looked picture perfect. In total, I had grown about 8 plants, which gave a moderate yield over time if you refrigerate the pods you pick daily to cook them once a week. I would say ideally okra wants at least 4 square feet of ground, although you can push it to yield in 1 square foot. Perhaps I would feel adventurous enough in subsequent years to grow okra outside the bounds of the cage, at the mercy of herbivores like groundhogs. In my previous place, I had seen them nibble and stunt okra plants, but it wasn't their first choice when kale was available. In any case, I hoped that my harvest of okra would continue to be great until it got cold in the fall. I would still have up to 3 months of suitable weather for the okra to continue producing, as long as I watered and mulched it and kept it picked. If you allow the seed pods to mature and become hard, your plant will stop producing new pods, thinking its prime objective to grow and set seed has been completed. If you want to see how my okra harvest turned out, don't miss my next episode. See you there.